This video is a record of the staff conferences which were held in February. In it you will hear extracts from some of the speeches given and answers to questions raised by your colleagues who attended the conference. When the video has finished, your manager will discuss with you the main themes of the conference and your objectives for the coming year. Enjoy your meeting.
We start from a point of fundamental principle, which is that the exchange's central function is to provide regulated markets in securities. In other words, the exchange draws together the needs of issuers of securities, investors in securities, and practitioners in the markets. In running these regulated securities markets, the exchange, as we all know, operates a great many technical services, information services, trading support, settlement services. But those services are devised and developed and operated solely as means of fulfilling the ultimate and central function of the exchange, which is to run our four markets. We have got a further function as a trade association representing the vital interests of an important part of the securities industry located in this country. We it is who make representations to government and to Parliament. It is our chairman who you will see on the television at budget time. The internationalization of markets makes this trade association role, I think, an increasingly demanding and important one. The International Stock Exchange remains essentially what it always has been, which is a membership organization. Our member firms are both our proprietors and the main customers for our services. Our strength lies in our ability to identify the central organization with the membership. This is a unique source of strength. We have in London, as member firms of the exchange, the most powerful concentration of securities intermediaries to be found anywhere in the world. It's worth just contemplating that fact. But if we alienate our member firms, we will ultimately destroy the stock exchange. We ought, I think, to remind ourselves that the exchange enjoys no monopoly in the provision of markets, that no one is obliged to join it. The exchange can only operate with the consent of its members and with a consensus amongst them as to what it has to do, and it has to win and retain the respect and goodwill of other users of the markets. We all know too well that we live in a competitive world. We can only beat that competition by working with our member firms. The secret of our success is going to be, as it has been in the past, in defining with the greatest accuracy the services which will help to enable our own member firms to prosper. To do that, we have to keep ourselves financially healthy, and we therefore have to look carefully at the financial return we make on each of our services. What we do not mean is that we look to the maximization of profit from those services. Our goals will all be expressed in terms of greater efficiency of our staff, greater effectiveness, lower transaction costs for our members, and a lower fixed cost base for ourselves.
Last year we were taking a very proactive stance. We had very clear mission, objectives, strategies. Now this year we seem to be getting the message that the member firm is king, that we must be directed by the member firms, and this is a rather more difficult message to handle. Two questions really. Is this a true interpretation of the direction we'll be taking in the coming year? And secondly, is having four divisions, each formulating a response to the member firms, the smartest way that we can organize our resources?
I think there's been a tendency, and many of you might feel that this was unfair, for us to be taking more of the role of an ambitious business which is responsible only to its shareholders. And we perhaps, I feel, and certainly many of the member firms feel, have not been sufficiently responsive to what they, the member firms in total, need of the stock exchange, and to be too attentive to expanding our services on the word exploitative basis has been used. I don't think that the discipline that I'm suggesting is really all that different from what a sophisticated service business in commerce would normally observe. It is focusing your attention to what the marketplace as a whole really requires. And it really is, to my mind, as simple as that.
There is undoubtedly a lot to be done to draw together particularly the two vital divisions, the market division and the services division, which are attempting to define those services and build them to precisely the right specification. We do try to draw together at the executive board level in quite some fine detail what we are doing, and we attempt to draw up for review in front of the executive board essential developments so that we can see to it that there isn't some piece of our activity which is being missed or some aspect which we're tackling incorrectly.
I think there never has been a time when we were more conscious of the need to coordinate our activities in a rather more effective way. And that is certainly true between the market departments, and it's certainly true between the markets committees. They can't exist as individual groups pursuing individual aims. And so part of our focus in recent months has been to draw those market divisions and departments and committees closer together, and at the same time achieve the sort of matrix approach with the services division under George, and indeed with the services board. And I think some of the arrangements we are setting up in those areas will help us to coordinate our work rather more effectively. But I happen to personally believe that there is a great deal more scope for what I have called multidiscipline teams of people, focusing their minds on particular projects and particular problems, drawing together a range of skills that you need. The Way Forward group is one such example of that, where you have a number of individuals coming together, bringing specialist skills. And I think, whilst, as Geoffrey has said, we need structure, effective structure, and if we need to clarify certain areas, then we must do that. But at the same time, you have to have the flexibility to cut across structure and draw together people who can contribute to the achievement of the specific goal, and I think we will need to do more of that.
How does the panel intend to reconcile the achieving of our future as a business with the current situation whereby we are so heavily influenced and indeed steered by those who are at the same time both our customers and competitors?
It seems to me that there are two possible ways in which you can suggest the existence of a conflict. One, which I think is more theoretical than real, is that the members sitting on the council could seek to depress the prices which we charge for services we provide to a point where they don't provide for ourselves the necessary rate of return to enable us to be financially viable. It has been an allegation in the past. One can think of other organizations which have suffered from precisely that. I have never seen any evidence of it here, and in any event, the chairman of the Stock Exchange is not only chairman of the Stock Exchange, he's also chairman of the Property and Finance Committee, and he, I know, would see to it that there was no artificial depressing of tariff rates in order to suit one part of the membership or the membership at large. So that's one possible conflict. I simply don't think it will be permitted to exist. The other one, it seems to me to be inherent in your reference to though being steered by those who are at the same time both our customers and our competitors. I think it is the most dangerous of attitudes to allow ourselves to develop. If there is a change, as I've acknowledged that there is a change this year in the approach which we put into our planning, and an approach therefore in the message that we're conveying to you this afternoon, it is that we have been regarded, there's clear evidence has been given to us that our membership does regard us as being, to some degree, a threat to them. And that's a very dangerous position, one we can't allow, and which we must do everything to get rid of.
Why does the stock exchange place so much emphasis on developing products and services that are not profitable and are unlikely ever to be, whilst those that are or could be are starved of resources?
There are some objectives which we have which probably outrank profit. I think this is probably what you were hinting at too, Clive. And in particular, something like SAFE, which helps to concentrate the market and fight against the forces of fragmentation, has to be given a high priority, even if the prospect of making profits out of it may be somewhat remote at this stage. And may I also say that as an organization, we do actually find it very difficult to reverse out of decisions to proceed with development of facilities because of the high political profile which we have. And that means that we have to be right sort of 90% of the time. Very few organizations manage to achieve that, particularly in the sort of volatile market conditions that we've experienced over the last couple of years. So it's regrettable, but not entirely surprising, that there are a couple of services around now which a thoroughly hard-nosed commercial organization probably would have axed. But I'm equally sure that it's right that we should be proceeding with them and trying to get them into profit and get them into the market over a slightly longer time scale for the benefit of the market, if you like, rather than for our straightforward financial benefit.
In summary form, this is what our product development hit list looks like. For each market, we have set the various priorities, as you can see, the essential products, the important products, those that are desirable and nice if we could. As you would expect, the major concentration is in the top left, essential products for the domestic equity market. Taurus, new issues, and of course, SAFE and the development of SAFE. Sequel is very high priority for the international market. And as you can see, a significant number of extremely important projects covering each of the markets. It adds up to a very formidable workload for George Hayter's team. And it's why we have to work closely with his team in the development of these key projects. And let me say, there are many desirable projects that simply didn't make it to this list.
It seemed to me that it might be useful to explore the question of whether or not the separation of the competent authority from the other activities of the exchange might allow information services, for example, to be developed in more creative ways than was possible given that regulatory responsibility.
Well, I'm quite clear that separation, or the euphemism for loss of our competent authority status, would be bad for issuers, bad for investors, bad for the exchange as an information service provider. As ex-merchant banker and therefore ex-poacher in these terms, I'm quite clear in my commitment to the exchange version of gamekeeping. I think it is by having practitioners involved in the regulation of issuers, we ensure that the regulatory regime is exposed to the realities and the needs of the market. So that's from the issuer's point of view, and one has to remind you that the purpose of the exchange starts with issuers and ends with investors. You cannot separate that purpose. So if it's bad for issuers, it's got to be bad for investors.
Do we know if our customers really want the ISE to provide the infrastructure for the safely commuted trade?
The question which Leslie is asking is encapsulated in one which came from Helen Passy, and I'll ask Bernard Reed to answer it. How can we ensure that the products we develop do meet the needs of our customers, and how can we ensure that they actually want these products? $64,000 question.
In fact, it is a two-part question. Going back to what I said about understanding the business of our customers, that is absolutely critical. And it doesn't just consist of listening only to the committees, because they can be fallible. Going back to the example cited earlier of SQL, part of the reason we didn't quite get it right the first time round was because we listened only to the committee as opposed to going out to the major end users, particularly on the continent. So we need to understand the environment within which our direct customers operate. And over the course of the coming year, particularly the needs of the professional fund manager that at the moment contributes the bulk of our members' income. Having defined a need, do our members really want us to provide a product, was the second part of the question. And there, that does require that we get very early sign-up, real commitment from any new service we intend to introduce. Again, we cannot just rely upon the committees, because very often the people on the committees are not the actual buyer within the member firm. And through the account managers in particular, we do need to get close to those who make the buying decision within the member firms in particular for any given new service, and get a written commitment at the very earliest stage we can. And I know Phil Reichardt is doing just that right now with SQL, and it's vital to our success that we do this before we commit large sums of money.
Our strategy, our policies, our approach to customers all have to focus on the fact that we have to earn our way to maintaining the central marketplace. We no longer have that position as of right. Ultimately, we can only do this. We can only maintain the central marketplace in London if we provide sufficient added value to the use of our marketplace to discourage practitioners and users generally from going elsewhere. We must face the fact that added value arises either from lower costs or from greater efficiency, and preferably from a combination of both. Those have to be our objectives, and we have to test our achievements against those objectives and expect to be judged by our success in achieving them. I know only too well that many member firms are doing comparisons in cost between London and other marketplaces. And I know, too, that the comparison is not always favorable to us. We have much to do to bring the balance back into our favor. We will be expected to observe the utmost self-discipline in managing our affairs, both in terms of the costs we incur, and must therefore ultimately pass on, and in terms of the efficiencies with which we provide services, develop systems, and so forth. But we also have to be driven by another discipline, and perhaps that's the most important of all. To use the current jargon, we have to be market-driven. But if the problems are severe, and I know only too well that they are, we should not in any way despair. To every problem, there is a solution, however difficult, however long it may take to get there. Our greatest asset, which we perhaps recognize too seldom, is that in general terms we have the goodwill and the support of our member firms and the users of the marketplace as a whole. That's an asset we have to preserve at all costs. If we get the answers right, and I'm sure we will, then there are huge potential achievements ahead of us. If we can get transaction costs down, all experience tells us that volume will rise, and with it, the income of the exchange. With the development of a common European economy, and I'm sure that will happen in the last decade of this century, we have a very real opportunity to become the equity market for Europe as a whole and really justify our international description. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the challenge ahead of us. Looking at the team before me, I have no doubt whatever that we can, all working together, achieve a very great future for the International Stock Exchange. Thank you.